Welcome to the Smile Effect. Today we're joined by accredited nutritionist and dietitian Carly Smith. You might know her from Nutrition by Carly. Welcome, Carly.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Wonderful to have you here. Now, before we get started on anything, what we always like to do is ask people, what made you smile in the last week?
Oh, good question. Mine's a bit niche, I would say, because in the last few weeks I just got a puppy, 12 weeks old, so a little toy cavoodle. Lots of smiles, obviously, involved. Spending time with her. Her name's Maple, like maple syrup, so she's pretty gorgeous. But at the same time, keeping us up all night and all those sorts of things too.
Absolutely.
But I mean, that's just been such a joy.
Yeah, fantastic. I know they're very busy times for the little puppies, aren't they?
Everyone warned us before we got her, it's going to be like having a baby. And I was like, that's ridiculous. It's a dog. And now we have her. I'm like, oh my God, I've become a mum.
It hits home pretty quick.
Yeah, totally. And it's a full-time job.
And much like when you have children, your camera reel will now just have photos of the puppy.
That's already happened. It was originally food, and now it's transitioned to puppy, dog content.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a really good one. It's not so much niche, I think, because a lot of people can relate to that side of things. It's a wonderful, wonderful feeling.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Today we're really here to also talk about sort of nutrition and its way that it impacts our health, teeth, all those sorts of things as well. Yeah. So if we're talking about general nutrition tips around there as well, from an oral health perspective, what do you tend to recommend to clients if they come to you and say they have oral health problems around there? Is there sort of some things that you say steer clear of, some things to go towards? Yeah. How do you approach that?
There really is so much that we can think about in the space of nutrition and oral health and that crossover. Like you'll find with really any health condition and that intersect with nutrition, a lot of it does come down to like those simple general basics, like eating a varied, healthy, whole foods-based diet, avoiding the ultra-processed foods and the packaged foods and foods with those sort of additives and sugars. But I guess if you went that level deeper and looked at the key nutrients that can support our oral health and our teeth, we're thinking about things like calcium, vitamin D, super important to keep the strength in our enamel, the sort of hard layer around the teeth. That's really important for growing teeth, younger kids, but all through the lifespan as well. So calcium's super key, found in all your dairy products, yogurt, cheese, milk, that sort of thing. And then we have other nutrients like, say, vitamin C is a really interesting one, more in the area of vitamin C deficiency and the way that can impact our oral health, our gum health. I always think of the the tales from hundreds of years ago around, like the pirates and the sailors, which you've probably come across where they experience scurvy.
Yeah.
So that's like very severe vitamin C deficiency. So for people who wouldn't know, back in those days, when they had those long voyages on the ocean, they didn't have access to fresh produce, fruits and vegetables. And because of that, a lot of them became super deficient in vitamin C, and it could lead to pretty severe kind of mouth issues, bleeding gums, loosening of teeth, poor wound healing, lots of different things. They, interestingly, back then, I think they at some stage discovered sucking on limes actually helped to, prevent these symptoms, but without realising it wasn't the limes themselves, it was the vitamin C in the limes. So, fast forwarding to now, we know that an easy way to prevent that sort of thing and those mouth-related issues can be having that plant-based diet with the fruit and the veggies and lots of vitamin C coming through. So that's always a really interesting one. But then other basics like water, drinking water, super, super critical for oral health, washing things out, washing away acidity, that sort of thing. So they're probably some of the big pillars, but there's obviously a lot more as well.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And so you mentioned water, of course, and hydration being super important. I mean, our teeth are protected by saliva, our mouth is conditioned by it as well. So it's a really critical ingredient. And certainly hydration helps with that.
Yeah.
What about electrolytes? I think that's one of the things that's often sort of skipped over in a lot of scenarios. We talk about sort of your macros of protein, carbs, fats, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. But electrolytes is one of those things that does appear in the saliva quite often. How do you see a role of that in oral health?
I think electrolytes are definitely important. It probably also depends where we're getting those electrolytes from. And a lot of people probably don't realise electrolytes made up within all of our foods. So many of our foods contain things like sodium and all the other wonderful electrolytes that we need for hydration. So I guess in then putting that back to the oral health, when people start relying heavily on those electrolyte drinks, so sports drinks, very popular, also quite sugary. So like the sugar content of these can be pretty high. Sometimes, whilst we think we're sort of doing that right thing there by having these electrolyte drinks where we're helping our hydration, we can actually be hindering our oral health because we're having that sugar come through. Not great for tooth decay, cavities, all of that. And at the end of the day, maybe we probably didn't need that extra boost of electrolytes anyways if we're eating that good quality whole foods diet.
Yeah. Well, you sort of mentioned there a bit about sort of like the sneaky foods, like thinking that sports drinks are beneficial for you. So what other foods are sort of like that little Trojan horse where you think they're really good for you, but they come with a bit of a sting in the tail?
There's so many. But I mean, if we're thinking specifically oral health related, things to just generally be wary of would probably be more the sticky foods. Dried fruit can be a pretty big culprit here.
Yes.
And that's from, oral health perspective because it can, dried fruit quite sticky, get stuck and sort of build up in the mouth. But even from a health perspective, dried fruit, it's pretty concentrated. So the sugar content, whilst natural sugars, it can be really high. And then also the calorie and energy content of our dried fruits is pretty high. So generally I tend to veer my clients away from loading up on dried fruit. I more say, stick to your whole fruits and go for, just a whole apple or a handful of grapes rather than lots of little sultanas.
Sure.
Because that's going to be so much better for your fibre factor and munching and then also fullness as well. So those sort of sticky foods play a role. We also have the more like acidic foods as well. Maybe things that are sort of vinegar based. I know there's a bit of a trend that's been going around, apple cider vinegar.
That's a big one, yes.
Yeah. I've had clients come to me saying, before every meal, they're like doing a full shot of apple cider vinegar. And from a nutrition health perspective, that's not something I'm ever encouraging. I don't think it's a magic potion. It's not going to fix all your issues. If anything, it's probably more concerning because think of what that's going to be doing to the tooth enamel, and it's such an acidic product.
It is terrifically acidic,
Yeah, undiluted as well if you're just sort of having it raw like that. So certainly not one I'd be recommending either.
And so with the sultanas that you mentioned, so grapes essentially dry them out, concentrate everything down. You lose a lot of the fullness that you will get from eating something like grapes.
Definitely.
Does the same sort of thing apply to like juices and smoothies? Like obviously people are thinking that they're really healthy because you're taking those fruits and everything and you're just blending them up. But do you lose some of that?
Yeah, I think definitely, probably mostly with the case of juicing. Juicing is probably a big one I don't tend to recommend a lot. I don't know if you have a juicer at home, but
I don't.
If you've ever seen the way they work, basically you're popping all your fruits or your veggies in. Out one side, you've got, all the wonderful juice and the liquid coming through, which is, a lot of the hydration and water as well coming out of the fruit and veg. But out the other side, we've got a lot of the pulp, the skin, all of that wonderful stuff that ends up going in the compost of the bin. And it's actually in there that we get a lot of our nutritional benefits.
Gotcha.
And we're sort of just left with that sort of highly concentrated, sugary liquid in the end. I would say you're much better off eating the whole fruits because then that way you're getting the crunching factor of eating the fruits. That can be more satisfying. And you also get a lot more of the fibre and, like we said, a lot more filling than just sipping on the liquid aspect. Smoothies are a little bit different because you do sort of put everything into the blender, blend it up, and then drink it whole. So you do get a lot more nutrition coming in. But I do have a lot of clients tell me that they feel like by drinking their foods in that way, they just don't get as satisfied than if they were to be consuming food and munching on it if it was laid out in front of them on a plate. So that can play on an individual factor too.
It feels more satisfying for them to have something more solid.
Yeah, definitely.
When you've got clients that are going through this, and it sounds like a lot of these tie in very closely with weight loss, for example, like the way that you're approaching healthy eating and healthcare around there as well. So really, we often look at the mouth as a bit of a gateway to the rest of the body and the health that way. So when you see clients change from a weight loss side of things as well as their diet, how does that sort of affect their whole health? Do you find you get a big change in health and outlook?
Yeah, I think so. Like when they're going through a weight loss journey and when they're sort of seeing results in that sense.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot can change, and it depends on what position they're in. If someone's sort of come to see us and they've got sort of a lot of weight to lose, and then they start to make those healthy, positive changes, eating more, plant-based foods, whole foods, cutting out the processed foods, not only will we see a change in the weight, which could be wonderful, but also a lot of other aspects as well. Increased energy, increased mood, sleep can improve, and mental health, and of course all of the bodily factors as well. So yeah, and then of course their entire outlook towards, or what they're eating will change too.
Yes, yeah. I mean, when you see those positive changes, it's easier to sort of reinforce that cycle.
Totally. Yeah, it's almost like a snowball effect. They say, especially with weight loss, it's sort of like that first 2 to 3 kilos that can be really challenging. But then once you get over that hump and you start to see the results and how good you feel as well, and you feel that difference, it just spurs on from there and the motivation keeps coming.
And so when you were talking about crunchy foods before as well, do they have a role in cleaning the teeth?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we think crunchy foods, we're sort of talking those really fibrous foods. So more your fibrous fruits and veggies, not so much your crunchy granola bars. I often hear people refer to things like apples as like nature's toothbrush in a way, because not only are you crunching into it, so it does have an ability to sort of clean the mouth and help to dislodge any other food particles. But the nice benefit is when we eat crunchy foods, we need to produce more saliva in order to break that down. And that's amazing for the mouth. It can help wash away acids and other sort of, sugary components of our foods too. So really good, to help with the pH of our mouth, all that sort of stuff. So saliva is amazing. Anything we eat that helps produce that is great.
Fantastic. So with clients, are you recommending things like sugar-free gum or anything like that with like stimulating saliva? Or you prefer people to stay away from that and just focus on the whole food side of things?
From a nutritional perspective, naturally, I do lean more towards the whole foods. Sugar-free gum can certainly help with that, though. And I've seen a lot of research to say that is excellent for that space. So it's an option. But I guess the only catch with that would be when people experience sort of bloating and sort of IBS or tummy issues in that space. Sometimes chewing gum can get a lot of air into the mouth and into the tummy, so gassiness and things like that. And it can also sort of fill us up so that then maybe we don't have the natural hunger to want to reach for our healthy snacks and foods. So pros and cons, works for the right people, but then for some people I say, actually just stick to your whole foods. That might be a better choice.
And with the sugar-free alternatives around there, often they contain xylitol or the sugar alcohols around there as well. How does that fit in with your client's health? Is that something that you sort of say moderation or small amounts, because that can cause gut upsets as well?
It's on an individual level. So it really comes down to the person and how they tolerate those sugar alcohols. For example, myself, I tolerate them just fine. So they can fit into my diet in a healthy way. I think with everything, though, in nutrition, moderation is always key. So always thinking about the moderation there. But that's an individual one for sure. Some people will find that they do get a bit of bloating or gassiness from over-consuming the sugar alcohols. And that doesn't mean that they're bad either. It doesn't mean that they're, a bad thing the whole population needs to avoid. It might just mean that you individually just don't tolerate them quite as well. And that's okay.
Yeah, well, it's a very important thing that we don't just sort of blanket rule everything, because everyone is very individual. Our habits are individual as well.
Yeah.
And so that feeds into sort of the microbiome as well, because everyone's got a different microbiome.
Exactly.
With your approach to health and nutrition, how do you look towards sort of encouraging a healthy microbiome? What sort of foods would you recommend?
It's such a big topic,
It's huge.
You've opened up a can of worms, but it is so important. And it's also one that's forever evolving. Like we're learning more and more about the importance of the microbiome and looking after the microbiome in your gut, but also your mouth. I think a lot of people don't realise there is an oral microbiome and your gut microbiome, and they're connected, so it's really important to look after both. The real key things here to think about is going to be, 2 aspects, and that's going to be your probiotics and your prebiotics. And it's important that we think about both of them and incorporate them both into the diet. So probiotics, These are going to be found in your more fermented foods. So we're thinking sauerkrauts, kimchis, but also things like your probiotic yogurts. There's some liquid yogurts called kefir. They're amazing probiotics and things you can just get from the supermarket. So these are an incredible thing to have in the tummy. We kind of refer to them as the fighters. They sort of fight off all the bad bacteria and all the bad stuff. But we also need the prebiotics as well, because that's what sort of feeds the probiotics. Right. So they're the feeders. And that's going to be coming back to your fibrous fruits and vegetables that we spoke about earlier. So your more fibre-rich foods, whole grains too. But yeah, any of those sort of crunchy, fibrous fruits, veggies, they're going to be your prebiotics. And we want that really nice combination of the two. And that's going to sort of, work really nicely together.
Each meal you have a little bit, or should they be standalone kind of things? What's the best way in terms of consuming those to get the maximum benefit from them?
That's a good question. And I think it does come down to your own routine as well. We don't want to be too strict and rigid on the way that we try to incorporate these things, because then that's when we overcomplicate it. And a lot of it does come down to simple basics. I always recommend trying to have a serve of probiotics every day. So that could be as simple as every morning with your breakfast, have a bit of probiotic yogurt, and you've sort of ticked that box. So that's excellent. If you can have more than that and try to incorporate it with all your meals, even better. But this is a good start. And then with the prebiotic foods, the best thing you can do here is really start to think about what we call plant diversity. Some people refer to it as eating the rainbow. Rather than sort of incorporating your veggie in the way of having your, carrot, peas and corn every single night with dinner, and that's about it. Try to really mix that up. We want different veggies at every meal, different fruits coming through, eat seasonally. You can actually get some really excellent apps that help you track how many plant foods you eat within a week.
Oh, right.
Yes, aiming to that 30 different plant foods at the end of your week. And 30 sounds, like a lot, 30 different plant foods. And that's not just fruits and veggies. That's also legumes, whole grains, herbs, spices, all of it, any sort of plant foods. So eating the rainbow and incorporating as many different sort of plant foods in would be the best way you can tick that prebiotic box.
Yeah, so really encouraging that variety.
Variety is key. Moving away from the beige diet, eating all the white foods, even though they're sometimes the yummy ones. Yeah. Colour is everything.
Yeah, it becomes very easy, isn't it, just to sort of slot into that groove and just keep following the same routine.
Yeah, I even think of when I grew up, it was really carrot, peas and corn every night for dinner, often frozen bag of that, which is okay. Frozen is just as good as fresh. But, now we know so much more about gut health and the need for variety. And that's why I like to say as well, eat seasonally, because that way you're just going to guarantee that you're always eating different produce throughout your year. You get to have all the right ones at the right time too, so they taste better.
And when you're cooking vegetables as well, pretty light on with the cooking, or cook the living daylights out of it? Where do you sit in that spectrum?
Yes. I mean, it really is a spectrum, because the less we cook our foods, of course, the more we get to keep that nutritional benefit in there. And it doesn't mean you can't cook things. Having lightly roasted veg is fine, or blanching, our vegetables, or a light saute, those sorts of things are totally fine. The main thing we try to avoid is totally boiling your veggies. And again, back in the day, when Mum used to boil the broccoli so long it comes out grey, that's what we're trying to avoid. Actually, all the wonderful nutrients would have seeped into the water. So unless you drank that sort of boiled water afterwards.
Yes. There's a tip anyway.
Yeah, you could try that. Otherwise, you're sort of losing a lot of the nutritional benefits. But again, that's why eating raw veggies is a great way, through snack plates or lunch boxes and things like that, because not only are you going to get so much nutrition in there, but also great for the mouth as well, that oral health, and bring it back to your teeth health as well.
I saw on your Instagram you had that 7 different snack plates around there as well.
Yes.
It's a really great idea to sort of incorporate lots of different things around there as well. And so is that sort of part of just setting up that variety as a routine? Yeah,
that's why I like to recommend the snack plates. I mean, not only is it quick and easy to throw together, but it does give you variety, and then you can constantly mix up what you're having, and it allows you to pair foods together really nicely. When we think about, again, oral health, one thing that we sometimes think about is the acidic nature of our foods and how that can really start to impact the enamel and that sort of thing. So one way to combat that is when you are having acidic food, so say your citrusy foods, oranges or mandarin, pineapple, pair it with other foods, and then that can sort of help balance out the pH. And a snack plate is a great way to do that. You know, you can have your pineapple there, slightly more acidic food, pair it with some cheese. It's a really nice sort of neutralizing food.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, and then add in like your crunchy carrot or your crunchy apple, and that's great too. Maybe a bit of hummus, a low sugar sort of dip, and you know, just like that, you've got quite a nicely balanced snack.
Yep.
So I find that really resonates with a lot of people and clients because it's quick and easy, and it gives you that variety.
And with medical settings, we're seeing lots of antibiotics prescribed, those sorts of things as well, which can then muck around with your gut quite a bit. So with the probiotics as well as prebiotics, how would you recommend scheduling like a diet around something like that? Because it's inevitable that at some point you probably will be prescribed antibiotics.
Yeah.
How do you help protect your body against that big wipeout of bacteria?
Such a good question. And I think people can get so confused around this too. It starts to make us think, oh my gosh, I shouldn't take antibiotics because they're just, you know, can be kind of harmful for the gut, of course. But it's important to know that antibiotics have such an important place.
Absolutely.
Medically. And we you're right, eventually we may need to take them. And the best thing we can do is just always, you know, pick up your antibiotic script and then go straight to the supermarket and pick up your probiotic. That's what I do at least. So my favourite kind of form of probiotic is the kefir that I mentioned earlier. So it's like a liquid yogurt, comes in a milk carton, and you can just grab that from any supermarket near where the yogurts are. And the recommendation would be you're obviously having that antibiotic every day, and then also try to have, say, half a cup of your liquid yogurt, your prebiotic yogurt at the same time. You're not necessarily going to counteract all the effects of the antibiotic, but you're at least doing the best you can to help support your gut during that more tricky time. And then on top of that, you know, just still stick to that whole foods diet, eating really well, drinking plenty of water, doing all those right things just while you're going through that course of taking the medicine.
Yeah, fantastic. It's very good tips because it's one of those things, as we're saying, you just can't avoid at some point in your life.
That's it.
You'll need it for a very important reason around there. So best if you can manage it from a different way.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. From a aging perspective, like throughout stages of life, how do you see nutrition playing a different role through those different stages from when they're a kid, teenager, adult, and then going through our older years? How do you see diet changing to help that oral health?
Yes, it does. It changes a lot. And nutrition and our nutrition requirements, more importantly, do change across the whole lifespan. And it's important people remember that. I think we can get really stagnant in the way we eat, and then we forget that we actually have these evolving nutritional requirements starting from when we're super little. So when we're thinking of really young kids, even around that sort of toddler age, it's about prioritizing those calcium, vitamin D rich foods. When we think of calcium, we think bone strength and keeping the bones healthy, but it's also about teeth strength as well. That is all connected. So we want all those good dairy sources coming through, yogurts again, milk, cheese, that sort of stuff. So that's really important. I think as well, this is a time where we want to think about, you know, sort of what we're having around that bedtime too for little ones. So one thing we tend to recommend, for example, with toddlers is if you try not to give them their bottles in bed.
Yes.
So they're drinking their milk.
That's a very important one.
Yeah, and like drinking formula, for example, as well, during bedtime. You know, we consume that milk. The natural sugars from the milk can kind of coat the teeth, and then while we're not producing as much saliva during bedtime and while sleeping, they sort of just sit there. And that can start to, you know, contribute to a bit of tooth decay, even from such a young age. So, yeah, I always say kind of try to have that bottle or that formula upon waking or much earlier in the day. So that's just one consideration around that younger year. As we get older, one thing we do think about is sort of teenagers. And this is where the sort of high sugar snacking can creep in.
Yes.
And high sugar drinks, soft drinks, sports drinks, all that sort of stuff. So that certainly plays a really big part for them. And it's really just about that sort of education. I know that's a tricky one.
Around that age, yes, it's a very difficult one to get in there. Yeah.
I think of myself, you know, after high school, I wasn't running home to have my carrots sticks and hummus, I was hanging around the 7-Eleven having a Slurpee with my friends.
Yes.
So I think education here is important, and just trying to promote that sort of more whole food snacking, filling the house with the right stuff rather than the high sugar products, and the ultra processed foods can help. And then just sort of educating around the idea that like energy drinks, soft drinks, sports drinks, these are probably things we want to have in moderation, not an everyday type of drink and beverage. So hydration and water consumption should always be top tier.
Yes.
So that's probably a really important one around those teenage years. And then creeping into adulthood, you know, we sort of do full circle. I think calcium still plays a big part here too, thinking about our bone health, our teeth health, really important. And as we get older, our need for calcium increases. So it's important to incorporate more dairy to contribute to that. And then just thinking about general habits as adults, you know, alcohol consumption.
That does tend to creep in a little bit more. Yeah,
it can. And red wine and then those sorts of drinks, should, you know, be considered in moderation. Coffee as well, black coffee, that sort of stuff. So it's really just looking at those daily habits that you have. Smoking as well, you know, not so much nutrition focused, but can really make a difference in your oral health. So
hugely.
Yeah, and I think just looking at that sort of stuff and trying to get on top of those habits is an important one.
And then when you go to like later stages in life, those sorts of things as well, does that then change as we sort of get into our, let's say, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, beyond? Are there extra requirements that we need to take care of when we get there?
Yeah, and I think, you know, your general health needs to be prioritised at that time. As we get older, you are obviously more susceptible to different health conditions, like gum diseases and dry mouth syndrome, things like that. If we're not producing as much saliva, that can really contribute to the oral health. So hydration, I think, becomes really crucial in those older years, especially when we're talking sort of 80 plus.
Yes.
Hydration's really important at that time. We tend to see that, you know, hydration can drop off at this time. So prioritising that, and then just continuing on with the, you know, the whole foods diet, those crunchy vegetables and using your teeth and eating those correct foods as much as you can. Yeah, I would say they're probably the main things we think about.
Yeah, and certainly from an acidic food perspective across those ages, some pretty rough stories about like young kids getting Coke in bottles and those sorts of things, and it certainly results in significant damage to teeth, which is pretty horrific. But even as we go throughout all that time, acidic challenges is something that we, once again, can rarely avoid, whether it's in good things like pineapple or things that we probably know that we shouldn't have, like some of the soft drinks, those kind of things that do creep in. What are your recommendations around that to help neutralise it? You spoke about cheese on a platter before around there. Do you have other strategies, like if you're out on the go around there?
You're right. It can feel a bit unavoidable. It's always going to be contributing to everything that we eat and drink. Cheese is a really great one because it's so sort of neutralizing. They say sort of, you know, consuming just a little bit of cheese after every meal can make quite the difference in the pH of your mouth. So that is a good tip. Also can help with breath, people say. So that's one to think about. But you're right. If you're on the go, it can be a bit harder. I do think just even hydration is a really important one here. Drinking water, one that we just don't put enough emphasis on probably. About 2.1 litres a day generally is what we're aiming for as an adult. So always having that water bottle on you and trying to prioritise that. And I think if you have something extremely acidic, then it could be a time where maybe rinsing the mouth out can play a bit of a role. So, and that's an easy thing to do, isn't it? You know, it's just water, but it can actually make a really big difference. So yeah, do a quick rinse and then waiting maybe say 30 minutes before brushing teeth as well, as we can have that sort of softening of the enamel. That would be a really important one to remember if it's sort of getting later in the night or early morning. So they're probably some important ones.
Yeah, because that brushing the teeth after an acidic challenge around there is a pretty significant one. You've got that softened enamel. Certainly the root surface is a lot more susceptible to that abrasion as well. So you can find it really accelerates things, and things like sensitivity crop out quite a lot.
Yes.
People have lots of issues with that. People can have a lot of issues with obviously decay, but also just the significant wear. People that are grinding or clenching their teeth at night, if they go to bed and they've got that softened enamel, it can really make a big difference to you long term as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, probably one people don't talk about a lot as well. Just generally, like the pH of your mouth and the acidic foods and drinks that you're consuming. I think, it's just one that doesn't get enough airtime. So it's important.
Yeah, well, your saliva's just there fighting that constant war, trying to buffer
Yeah.
everything around there and trying to protect what it's there to protect, really.
Yeah.
And so by getting that really wonderful diet, focusing on a variety of things as well, and helping it buffer the acids, we can give it the optimum kind of result in terms of
Exactly.
protecting the teeth as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, all very good tips.
Yeah, great.
Thank you so much, Carly, for joining us on today's episode as well and giving us all those really useful tips on nutrition. It's been fantastic talking with you. Really, I'm glad to have that opportunity. And make sure you do check Carly out on her social media, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. That's about it for the social media side of things, just at the moment we were talking about anyway.
Yeah.
And her website as well.
Yeah.
She can help out with lots of nutritional needs from there. But some really wonderful plans, fantastic tips, great videos that you'll be able to follow along with as well. So thank you very much, Carly. That's it for us today. And then you can follow on with us next time.